I think the other thing too, we go back to authenticity, and that is also, sometimes talk about, maybe we had a few issues at the beginning, but we were able to do this and we overcame it, and just be kind of transparent.
Welcome to Your Intended Message, the perfect place for leaders and promising professionals who want to convey the intended message for greater success. Every week, we interview experts who address the challenges and best practices to deliver your message effectively. That might be one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. And perhaps the most important conversation, one-to-self. I'm your host, George Torok. My guest today is John Golden. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about John. 1, he's the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Pipeliner CRM. 2, he's an author, speaker, and a host of Sales Pop podcasts. And 3, don't mess with John because he's an avid martial artist. John Golden, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much, George. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I have to ask, which martial art, or is it more than one that you practice?
Well, it's primarily Taekwondo I do, but we do Hapkido, we do some Gumdo, which is Korean sword fighting, and I do a bit of boxing, and sometimes we do some judo. So we mix up a lot of stuff, but it's primarily Taekwondo.
Oh, cool. Yeah, a couple decades ago, I studied karate for a couple of years.
Yeah,
it was fun. Good workout at the time. Yeah. And you learn to develop a respect for everyone because you never know. Don't go starting a fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the best lesson. As one of my first instructors way back when I started, and when I did it first in Ireland, he said the best form of self-defense is a clean pair of heels.
Smart advice, yes. And what was it that Mr. Miyagi said? The best block, no be there.
Yeah, exactly.
John, we're talking about communication and marketing today, marketing and sales. And where do you see the opportunities for business to gain an advantage with their marketing and sales programs?
Yeah, I think I think there's a few things, George, and one of them I think is authenticity. I think that is one of the biggest areas that you can focus on now, because I think prior to the pandemic, I think people were already starting to crave a little bit more of the relationship piece, because we'd heard years about inbound and everything, and almost like this kind of reducing the sales element of it. But the reality is that people were craving getting back to more relationship. COVID really accentuated that. And I think today, one of the things that you can do is just meet people where they are, and people want an authentic interaction and engagement. So I think through your marketing and your sales is find your authentic voice. Don't try, as I always say, don't try to be somebody else. I always quote my compatriot Oscar Wilde is be yourself because everybody else is taken. And I really think that because, as you know today, George, we're bombarded from all angles, and clever tactics, and spamming from all over the place. What we really, and certainly I know I do, what I crave is an authentic interaction. I want to know if somebody is engaging with me, what value they're bringing to the table. Why should I care? Do they understand me? Have they done any rudimentary understanding of the audience they're talking to? So I would first and foremost say authenticity. If you're trying to be what you're not, if you're trying to use kind of clever tactics, set them aside, be genuine, be upfront, be polite, be professional.
And what does it mean to build a relationship when you're dealing with prospects, when you're reaching out to hopefully new clients? Where do you start the relationship, and how do you build on nothing?
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, you do as much research as you can in advance, right? So the thing is, I think today you have to understand the business if you want to be a good salesperson, and I would say marketing too, because I don't really differentiate that much between the two of them because the way things have started to align, but is understand business, understand the business of business, and understand the business of your client, right? So do your homework. And then it's all about questioning and uncovering and getting into a dialogue, right? And trying to understand exactly what's going on in your business, George. And I think the most important part of it is to have a conversation, to ask questions, and to listen to what you come back and say, and digest that and go deeper. Because oftentimes what we do is we connect, or we connect with somebody, engage with them. And the first time I hear something from you, George, that sounds like a problem I can solve, I dive on it. Instead of going, well, let's explore this in a little bit more detail. Let's go down a few levels, because sometimes what happens is if you go down a few levels, you'll discover, yeah, George has an issue here. It's not an issue he cares that much about. It's not an issue that he's really going to invest much, and we're already taking the conversation in the wrong direction. So I would say the first thing is active listening and really good questioning and exploration. And I think people have gotten into this habit of, we live in this shortcut culture that people are trying to cut to the chase and trying to get you to the close immediately. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff I hear today, instead of having that respect for the other person and actually trying to understand them.
Curious that you use the word respect, because I see a lot of email where my reaction is, these people aren't respecting me. And today I was looking at it. So this is a repeated message from someone trying to sell me something that I'm not interested in. And they're writing again saying, oh, I wonder if you got my previous message. And so here's the words that really tick me off. I would appreciate a prompt reply.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. But yeah, that's the point. That's the point. This all the tactics out there and some of the interaction today is so crazy. But what I take away from it, George, is these people are setting the bar real low for everyone else. So if you're smart and you go, okay, here's the thing is, you're never going to get dinged for being professional, being polite, being respectful. And if your outreach, and if you do it in that way, you will come off completely differently from these people. I get them all the time, is like you do. I get the, hey, John. I'm like, hey, my mother used to say, hey's for horses, and it's like, I don't even know you, but yeah. And then you're communicating me like we're long lost buddies. You're trying to be funny. And the funny part just gets me. It's like, come on, forget with the silly little gimmicks, and just be real, just be really genuine. If you're really genuine and interested, and I think that's the other thing, is intellectual curiosity. Be genuine. It sounds like you're genuinely interested. So if George, what would the difference be if somebody reached out to you and they sound like they're genuinely interested in you, George, what's going on with you, they want to learn more? I mean, that's a whole different experience, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. If they actually show that they're interested in me, and they demonstrate a little bit of research before they reached out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the critical part, is that they've done some research. There's nothing more, irritating today is when somebody starts asking you questions about your business or the company or something, stuff that you say, like, it's right there on the homepage, dude. It would have taken you 2 seconds, or it's right there on my LinkedIn profile.
Or another, what I consider an insulting question. Do you want more clients?
Oh, yeah. I like the other one where people just call you up or just send you emails and stuff telling you that what you're doing now sucks. Your website sucks. You're this. I go, yeah. If you knew anything about human nature, it rarely works is just telling somebody that they're not good, or their baby's ugly, or whatever. That's never kind of a really good place to start. And it's also quite arrogant of you, because you're coming at this from the outside. You have no idea, and you're making these blanket statements. So yeah, I would always avoid all of that kind of stuff where you're basically sort of just pointing out things that you have no right to point out.
Something like, your website sucks, but I can fix it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, is how do you know? And that's the other thing, is how do you know I'm not the proudest whatever about that website, and I've done it and it's all me, and you've just basically just hit me with an insult. Now, maybe my website can use help, but if you came at it the right direction, I might go, oh, okay, yeah, you mean I could enhance, I could take it to it, you could do this, fantastic, that's great. But if you just come in and say, yeah, your baby's ugly.
John, customer success stories. Is that a good approach?
Oh, customer success stories, 100%. And I think this is where sometimes we forget. It seems so obvious, right? But when I engage personally, when I engage with another salesperson, right, or somebody selling something to me, yes, I'm interested in what they can do for me, but I'm really interested in what they've done for other people. Because that's where it is. Because let's face it, we all know that anybody who's brought a product or service to market, you always know that customers end up using it in ways that you could never imagine, right? And they do things differently, not how you see. And therefore, learning about what you have done with other people, that is great information for somebody, for a prospect you're engaging with. And that's what I love. I want to hear the things that they've done with other people, how they helped other companies, how they helped other individuals, and those stories. And we all come from, culturally, we all kind of come from storytelling traditions. Certainly I do, in Ireland. And that's what resonates with people is stories. And now you take yourself out of the equation a little bit and you put your customer and you say, what their issue, what their solution. And here's the nice thing is, like, you should be enthusiastic and say, and then they did this, or they asked us to do this, right? They said, hey, if your product could just do this one other thing. And something, we went back and we discovered, yeah, that's something that would benefit everybody. And we immediately, implemented it in a way. So there's so much richness in talking about your customer success story. So I would invest a lot of time there, and I would be proud and enthusiastic about talking with them. And also, I think the other thing too, we go back to authenticity, and that is also, sometimes talk about, maybe we had a few issues at the beginning, but we were able to do this and we overcame it, and just be kind of transparent.
Authenticity, does that mean admitting your flaws and weaknesses?
I think it does in terms of, I think it's fine for you to accentuate what you do well, and then to, be honest about maybe some of the things where your capabilities may be not as good as another one. But overall, it's going to be, rather than just kind of pretend everything is good. Because I always think about this, George, not about you, but when I engage with an expert, maybe it's even a doctor or somebody, right? I have more trust in somebody if I ask them a question and they actually turn around and tell me they don't know the answer, or that's not what they do, or whatever it is. It's for me, that's more credibility building, because I'm like, okay, you're an expert in what you do, but you're also secure, and you're not pulling the wool over my eyes because you're prepared to admit that you don't know something, or you don't do something well.
Mm. Or this is a new market that we're entering into, so we're looking at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah. But I think that's so. I think that's so important that you just don't try and be on edge and trying to sort of go, ooh, George just asked me something that's not a really good part of our system, or we don't really do that. Is instead of trying to skirt around it, like, try and bring it back to what are the core elements. Because you'll often find is, like, if you have 4 out of 5 things, and maybe the 5th thing isn't as great, those 4 things are powerful enough that eventually, it'll be a good solution for you and you can live with the other piece. But if I try and cover up the other piece, then I've shot my credibility.
With existing customers, how often should we stay in touch?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, I think, because today, as I said, we have this perception that we're the busiest we've ever been. But I always say, I think it's that we're more distracted than we've ever been, because we have messages and we have stuff coming at us from all directions. Our phone is hopping off the desk. Our inbox is filling up, or we go to LinkedIn, we're bombarded everywhere. People are coming at us. So I think the best thing to do is, when you bring a customer on board initially, is have a discussion with them at that point. Don't wait, have a discussion at that point. So to set up a communication cadence, say, obviously we have customer success and customer support, and they're always available to you. But let's set up a cadence for proper check-in. So maybe it's a quarterly business review. Maybe it's maybe it's a biannual business review, or whatever. But try and establish sort of those markers of things that are officially kind of on the calendar. And then I think the other part is to gauge what kind of communication is important to a particular customer. Like, one person may be very kind of technical and may want all that stuff all the time. So when there's something, you can feed all of that. So just make sure you're feeding them the information that they need. Maybe somebody else is a little way more high level. So just a quick update on something might work perfectly for them. But I would definitely establish your communication cadence at the point of onboarding, rather than try and establish, because oftentimes now, especially with technology products, oftentimes if it's working, customers are like, yeah, it's fine. disappear off. I don't really need to talk about anything. And and sometimes you could go for the old, well, no news is good news. But on the flip side of that is those people are unlikely to progress their usage of your product or service, and that, if you just leave them alone completely and you just think, oh, no news is good news, you need to find those moments to outreach and help. One of the things we do at Pipeliner, George, I think, is that we took this philosophy on customer success and support, is that we're not ticket closers, right? If you have an issue with Pipeliner and you open a ticket, yes, obviously we'll fix the issue. But our goal is not to just close the ticket. Our goal is to understand more. This is an opportunity to engage with you. This is an opportunity to fix the issue, but maybe the issue I'm fixing for you, you could do this another way, or maybe there's another capability that you're not using right now. So we use it as a relationship and an education opportunity as well. And I think that's a different approach than just trying to close tickets and move on.
What role should automation and even AI play in maintaining the relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a huge part of it now, because I think if we're going to really focus on what salespeople do best, and that is like building those relationships, and that is, we've got to take away any routine, repetitive, rote work that doesn't bring value. And so automate as much as you can of that, of lead scoring, lead distribution, having AI like enhance the information or the data about the customer, bring it. So I think anything that can enrich your understanding of a customer. So, using AI to get more data, making sure like helping AI with your communication so they're on target, they're on point, using automation to remove, as I said, rote and routine tasks, having good cadences in your communication and mixing it up between email and voice and all of that. And I think that's a good thing. And that allows then the salesperson to really focus on understanding the client, getting to know the client, building on the relationship part. So I think it's huge. And that's why I think that when people are worrying about, oh, is this going to replace sales? I think salespeople, they go, well, maybe on some levels, but it's actually an opportunity for salespeople to elevate their game. Because think about it, if you can get rid of all that nonsense work that you often have to do, and you can really focus in on building your selling skills and your relationships with your customers, I think we're in a better place. And I think that's going to actually elevate salespeople.
Are people still having phone calls, or are they simply texting? What are you seeing?
They're doing all of the above. I think one of the interesting things is there's 5, I think, bordering on 6 generations in the workforce right now. There's certainly 5. Don't ask me to name them, but there is. And so not only do we have more generations in the workforce than we've ever had before, but also within those, we have boomers who are very technologically savvy. We have, millennials who don't want to ever communicate with people. Well, and so we have a complete mix across the board. So I think you have to meet your customers or your prospects where they are. And therefore, I think it's also a good thing as part of your sales process is to ask the person, how do you like to be communicated with? How do you want, what's the best way? Does text work for you, George? Does phone calls work better for you? Is it better if I just do, email? How do you want to communicate? But the phone is still very, very important, because if you use it properly, again, if you use it as a way of establishing rapport and relationships with people. One interesting, actually, just reminded me of a story somebody told me not too long ago, where there was a sales coach doing a ride along with the salesperson. And the sales coach is they're driving to another engagement, and the salesperson got a text, a customer or prospect, with this simple question, right? And what did the salesperson do? Call them, right? And he called them, and this coach was sort of sitting there, and the coach could tell it was a bit of a stilted conversation. It was very short, and the coach turned to him and said, your prospect texted you, yeah? Yeah. Why did you call him? Why didn't you text him back? And he goes, well, I thought it would be better to call him, but he texted you with the question. You could have answered the text with the question. You could have said, I'm available to talk. If you would like, I can call you, or you can call me. Now that's being respectful, and it's still perhaps getting your opportunity to have that conversation. But, but think about it. I text you, you call me. I didn't ask you to call me. I asked you to text me back. And I think we just got to be more aware of how people like to be communicated with, and it may not suit us, right? It may not suit us. That's the thing. But at the end of the day, you have a choice. You can either go with how the buyer wants to do it, or you can go with how you want to do it and see where that gets you.
And John, I want to point that out. I want to highlight there. So the customer sent a short text question that could be answered with a short text answer, and that's what they wanted. But the salesperson was thinking about themselves and their opportunity to try to sell something else, maybe.
Or just or whatever, or just engage, or thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to talk to them now, or whatever. But it wasn't being respectful. But like I said, you could have asked permission. You could have said, "Here's the answer, but it's a little more complex than this. Do you have time now to jump on a call?" Simple as.
Perfect example there. And I guess the lesson is to respond in the same medium and manner that they reached out to you.
Mm-hmm. It's like classic mirroring in some ways, George. Is like mirror how the other person wants to interact, and how it's like that. It's like if you're interacting, as I said, if you're interacting with a highly detailed technical person and you keep talking at a 10,000 foot level, right? You're out of sync with the person you're talking to. Same as if you've got somebody who's a 10,000 foot thinker and you're down in the weeds, you're out of sync with it. So I think that the key is always trying to understand, learn about your prospects, your customer, and be in sync with what's important to them and with how they like to communicate.
And what do you think is the one difference that most people could do to be a better communicator?
Oh, I think that's an easy one. I think that is actively listen. It seems most people, when you say to people, "Oh, you need to actively listen," they go, "Oh, yeah, no, I totally understand that." But you say, no, actively listening is there's a few things about it. It's number one is you really understand what the other person is trying to explain to you, and the more you validate what they're saying, the more I say, let me understand what you just said. Let me make sure I'm clear on that. Let's go down again. Could you explain that to me just again to make sure I have it here? And that way you're really getting into understanding what it is that's important to them. And then when they reply, is actually listen. And this is the part that I think is getting harder for people, because as I said earlier, we're so distracted. We're thinking about, we're instead of going, no, I'm going to focus on exactly what George is saying right now. And I'm going to think about it. And then I'm going to make sure that I understand what he said. I'm going to make sure he understands that I understand what he just said. And I think that's the best thing you can do is that active listening, focus on what the person has said, and then validate it. Don't be thinking about what's my clever comeback, what's my next line going to be. It's like, don't go to your next line until you've clearly made sure that George understands that you understand what they just said. They do that, by the way. That's group counseling, couples counseling, all of that kind of stuff. That's a tactic they use. Is like if you say something to me and then we can't move on until I can explain to you what you said and you agree that that's exactly what you said, as opposed to often like you say something and then I go, yeah, I understand that, and I move on, and right, well, I haven't really listened to you.
Good advice in there. John, where does a CRM fit into all this?
Oh, yeah, CRM right now would you run a business today without some kind of bookkeeping software, right? You wouldn't. I mean, pretty much everybody knows it's a staple. You have to do it. It makes sense. CRM, to be honest, is the same. CRM should be the heartbeat of your company, because let's face it, every company has customers and needs to generate revenue. Okay. And the CRM, the customer relationship management, that's where your customers, your prospects, that's where your revenue, all the information about your revenue and generating it's going to come from. So it needs to be the heartbeat of your company. It should be the single source of truth. It should be a place that everybody knows this is where I can, all the information about, customers, prospects, their history, all the different people in the organizations who've interacted with them, a place where you can immediately get a complete picture of the prospect or client. And therefore, if you're not actively using your CRM, if your salespeople aren't actively using your CRM, then you're I don't understand how you can be efficient. You can't be efficient because otherwise people are compensating by using other tools. So there's an inherent inefficiency built into that. There's also, you can't trust the data in your system if people aren't using it properly. And so I think it's critically important, and it's critical that you are very careful in your choice of CRM, and you understand what it can't do. And as we talked earlier, nowadays with automation and AI and that, you should be taking advantage of all of this again to allow yourself to focus on the relationship and not on data entry and things like that. But I just don't think anymore. And as self-serving as it sounds, I know from a CRM company, you can't operate anymore without a CRM being the heartbeat of your business. It's like trying to operate without a bookkeeping system.
And for people who would like to learn more about your services and the company, Pipeliner CRM, they can go to the website, pipelinersales.com, and they can sign up for a free trial of the CRM.
You take a free trial or a demo if you would prefer us to show it to you. Either way, lots of information on the website. But yeah, I would encourage you. You'll see the difference. We're all about visual. We're all about engaging a salesperson. We are the AI sales CRM. We have a lot of AI built into it. We're building more as coming, but we're all about sales. So we are a sales CRM, and that's what we do. We focus 100% on supporting salespeople.
John, as we prepare to wrap up, if you could sit down with a sales team leader who's prepared to have their regular meeting with the team, and if you could give that team leader 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice about how those team members can gain an unfair advantage over the competition by improving their communication, what might be that 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice?
Yeah. So first of all, I would do the first one. First piece of advice I would give, and it's kind of taken it from my martial arts experiences, as I say to people, is sometimes I'll go to class or whatever with my master and all of that, and we will spend the whole class doing basic stances, basic stuff to be done thousands of times before, right? But I guarantee he'll correct something, because we all develop bad habits and we forget about things. So the first thing I would say is every so often you should return to the fundamentals and just check in with your team saying, are we doing everything? Are we following the sales process? Are we doing everything in the right way? Because oftentimes when somebody falls into a slump and things, if you go back and say, okay, let's look at what you were doing when you were successful and what are you doing now? You'll say, okay, looks like you're skipping a few steps. You didn't do this here. Because that's what we are. We get complacent. We get overconfident. Oh, I've been doing this forever. I don't need to do that piece. So the first thing, as I would say, is revisit fundamentals on a regular basis and make sure you're following the process. You're reinforcing the process. Because again, if you have a sales process, but I, as your manager, do not reinforce it, then you go, doesn't matter. Right. So that was the first one. Second one, I would just say is be really professional in your communication. Because as we said earlier, I think the bar is set so low that you can stand out if you're professional, grammatically correct. It doesn't matter. You'll never get dinged for being too formal, right? But you certainly get dinged for being too casual. So I would always err on the side of your initial communications to be semi-formal, at least formal to semi to formal, professional, polite. Okay, that's a fantastic starting point. Don't start off with the haze and the highs and the all of that. And then I think the last piece is referrals. I think, George, is that is the one area that I think pretty much everybody doesn't do a good job of, is keeping referrals top of mind and understanding how to ask customers for referrals. What we do often is we just do it once. We go, hey, George, you got somebody you could refer to me? And you go, oh, what? Hang on. No, I can't think of anybody. You think, I asked, no good. I mean, I just asked you out of the blue. I didn't give you any guidance. I didn't say, do you know any people like this? Or I didn't give you the opportunity to think about and say, here, George, here's the profile. Here's the kind of thing we do. You've talked with us. If you can think of anybody, that would certainly help. But just don't go, hey, George, do you know anybody? And I've just given you a job. you didn't ask for, right? So I think those are the three things. And I would say, revisit referrals on a regular basis, because you may come across somebody next week and I haven't communicated with you in 6 months, and it just slips by because you're not top of mind.
Profitable advice there. My guest today is John Golden, reminding you to meet people where they are.
If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.
All right, I would really encourage you to listen to this fantastic podcast that I have done with George. In it, we really dive deep into how salespeople can communicate better with authenticity, how they can connect better with customers and prospects, especially in this very noisy, crowded world, distracted world that we live in today. So I would encourage you to tune in and to, listen and follow and share. My name is John Golden from Pipeliner CRM and Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine. Thank you.